Happy Memorial Day, everyone. So this is pre-recorded. We are not live today, but I hope you are all having a very good day. And I thought I would still bring Fablehaven to you. We are on chapter 5. I haven't read it before, so I was trying to keep ahead a few chapters, but I thought I would surprise myself this Memorial Day and read it along with you. So if you remember last Monday, Grandpa Sorensen had agreed to give Kendra and Seth a reduced punishment because they disobeyed the rules, if you remember, and they found that huge pond with all the gazebos and the deadly animals. So instead of making them stay in their room for the rest of their whole time there, Grandpa Sorensen had said they could stay in for just one day if they promised not to break the rules again. So let's see how they do on chapter 5 of Brandon Mull's Fablehaven. If you have missed previous chapters, don't forget you can visit our YouTube channel to catch up, where you'll find chapters 1 to 4, also our craft videos and preschool story times and things like that. You can just go onto YouTube and search Gale Library Newton and it should pop right up. Okay, so I'll just give you a quick last paragraph of the last chapter to remind you. Maybe you could give us a reduced punishment as a warning, then the full punishment if we mess up again. Reduced punishment, Grandpa mused. So you still pay a price for your disobedience, but you get one more chance. I might be able to live with that. Seth? Better than the whole punishment. That settles it. I will reduce your sentence to a single day. You will spend tomorrow confined to the attic. You can come down for meals and you can use the bathroom, but that is all. Break any of my rules again and you will not leave the attic until your parents come for you, for your own safety. Understood? Yes, sir, said Kendra. Seth nodded in his agreement. Okay, so we are on chapter 5, Journal of Secrets, Fablehaven by Brandon Mull. Did you ever notice the keyhole on the belly of the unicorn? Seth asked. He was lying on the floor beside the fanciful rocking horse, hands laced behind his head. Kendra looked up from her painting. She had asked Lena to create a paint by numbers to help her endure her incarceration. I'm sorry, that didn't sound right. Kendra had wanted to paint the pavilions around the pool, and Lena had quickly sketched a scene with startling accuracy, as if the housekeeper had the place memorized. Seth declined to have another canvas prepped. Stuck in the attic or not, he was sick of painting. Keyhole? Weren't you looking for keyholes? Kendra got off her stool and crouched beside her brother. Sure enough, there was a tiny keyhole on the underside of the unicorn. She retrieved her keys from the nightstand drawer. The third key Grandpa Sorensen had given her did the trick. A small hatch swung open. Out fell several rose-shaped chocolates wrapped in gold. Gold foil, identical to the one she had found in the miniature amour. What are those? Seth asked. Soap, Kendra said. Kendra reached into the hatch and felt inside the hollow rocking horse. She found a few more rosebud chocolates and a tiny golden key, like the one from the amour. The second key to the locked journal. They look like candy, Seth said, snatching one of the 10 chocolates. Have one, they're perfumed. You'll smell pretty. He unwrapped it. Funny color for soap. Smells a lot like chocolate. He popped the whole thing in his mouth. His eyebrows shot up. Holy cow, this is good. Since you found the keyhole, how about we split them 50-50? She was a little worried he would eat all of them otherwise. Sounds fair, he said, grabbing 4 more. Kendra placed her 5 chocolates in the nightstand drawer and retrieved the locked book. As she expected, the second gold key unlocked another clasp. Where could the third one be? She slapped her forehead. The first 2 had been hidden inside the other keys things the other keys had opened. The other one must be in the jewelry box. Opening the jewelry box, she rummaged through the compartments of the glittering pendants, brooches, and rings. Sure enough, disguised on a charm bracelet, she found a tiny golden key matching the other 2. Kendra eagerly crossed the room and inserted the key into the final lock on the Journal of Secrets. The final clasp unlatched and she opened the book. The first page was blank, so was the second. She thumbed through quickly. The whole book was blank. There was just an empty journal. Was Grandpa Sorensen trying to encourage her to keep a diary? But the whole game with the keys had been so sneaky. Maybe there was a trick to this as well. A hidden message, maybe? Disappearing ink or something. What was the trick with the disappearing ink? Spray it with lemon juice and hold it up to a light, something like that? And there was another trick, where if you rubbed it gently with a pencil, a message appeared. Or maybe something even more devious. Kendra surveyed the journal more carefully, hunting for clues. She held a few pages up to the window to see if the light would betray hidden watermarks or other mysterious evidence. "What are you doing?" Seth asked. He had only one chocolate rosebud left. She would need to hide her chocolate someplace more secure than the nightstand drawer. She held the final page. The light revealed nothing. "Practicing for my audition at this insane asylum? I bet you'll win first prize," he teased. "Unless they see your face," she retorted. Seth went over and scooped some kernels for the Goldilocks. She laid another egg. He opened the cage to retrieve it and stroked her soft feathers. Kendra plopped down onto the bed, leafing through the last pages. Suddenly she stopped. There was writing on one of the final pages. Not really hidden, just tucked away in an unlikely spot. 3 words written near the binding toward the bottom of an otherwise empty page. "Drink the milk." Folding the corner, she flipped through the remaining pages. Then she skimmed the rest of the pages from the start to make sure she hadn't missed any similar messages. There were no other cryptic clues. Drink the milk. Maybe soaking in a page of milk would make more words appear. She could soak one in the tins of milk that Dale left out. Or could it be that the milk message... Or that could be the milk the message was talking about. I can't get my words today. A challenge to drink unprocessed cow's milk. What purpose could that serve? To give her diarrhea? Dale had made a special point of warning her not to drink the milk. Of course, he had acted sort of peculiar about it. He could be hiding something. Drink the milk. Would you guys drink the milk? I think I would. All the hassle of finding holes for keys Grandpa Sorensen gave her in order to uncover extra keys that fit a locked journal for that odd message. Was she missing something or overanalyzing? The hunt might have been simply meant to keep her occupied. "Do you think Mum and Dad would let us get a pet chicken?" Seth asked, holding the hen. "Probably right after they let us get a pet buffalo." "Why don't you ever hold Goldilocks? She's really good." "Holding a live chicken sounds disgusting. Better than holding a dead one." "I'm fine just petting her." "You're missing out." Seth held the hen to his face. "You're a good chicken, aren't you, Goldilocks?" The hen clucked softly. "She's going to peck your eyes out," Kendra warned. "No way. She's tame." Popping one of the rosebud chocolates in her mouth, Kendra replaced the Journal of Secrets in the nightstand drawer and returned to her painting. She scowled. Between the gazebos, pond, and swan, the picture required more than 30 shades of white, grey, and silver. Using the sample hues that Lena had given her, she prepared her next colour. The sun was bright the next day. There was no evidence that it had rained or that it would ever rain again. Hummingbirds, butterflies, and bumblebees had returned to the yard. Lena gardened in the back beneath a large sun hat. Kendra sat in the shade of the porch. No longer a prisoner in the attic, she felt better able to enjoy the fine weather. She wondered if the diverse butterflies she saw in the yard were among the species that Grandpa Sorensen had imported. How did you keep a butterfly from leaving your property? The milk, perhaps? She passed the time with a game she had found on the shelf in the attic, a triangular board with 15 holes and 14 pegs. The object was to jump pegs like checkers until you had only one left, which sounded simple at first. The problem was that in the process of jumping, certain pegs ended up stranded, unable to jump or be jumped. The number of pegs you left stranded on the board determined your score. Her best effort so far was 3, which the directions labelled typical. Leaving 2 was good, 1 was genius, 5 or more labelled you as hopeless. While resting the pegs for a fresh attempt, Kendra saw what she had been waiting for. Dale was walking along the perimeter of the yard with the pie tin. Setting the peg game on the table, she hurried to intercept him. Dale looked mildly distressed at her approach. "I can't let Lena see you talking to me like this," he murmured in low tones. "I'm supposed to put milk out on the sly." "I thought nobody knew you put milk out." "Right, See, your grandfather doesn't know, but Lena does. We tried to keep it our secret. I was wondering what the milk tastes like. He looked nervous. Didn't you hear me last time? You could get shingles, scabies, scurvy. Scurvy? The milk is a bacterial stew. That's why the insects like it so well. I have friends who have tried to drink fresh milk from the cow. They survived. I'm sure those were healthy cows, Dale said. These cows are... never you mind. Idea is, that ain't just any old milk. It's highly contaminated. I wash my hands good after everything, after even handling the stuff. So you don't think I should taste it? Not unless you're aiming to get a premature burial. Would you at least let me take it to the barn to see the cows? Take me to the barn to see the cows. See the cows? That would be breaking your grandfather's rules. I thought the point was that we might get hurt, Kendra said. I'll be fine if you're with me. Your grandfather's rules are your grandfather's rules. He has his reasons, and I'm not about to go breaking them or bending them either. No? Maybe if you let me see the cows, I'll keep your secret about putting out the milk. Now see, that's blackmail. I'll not stand for blackmail. I wonder what Grandpa will say when I tell him at dinner tonight. He'll likely say that you ought to mind your own affairs. Now, with your leave, I have chores to do. She watched him walk away with the tin of milk. He surely had acted defensive and strange. There was definitely something mysterious surrounding the milk. But all that talk about bacteria made her reluctant to try it. She needed a guinea pig. I think that might be Seth. Seth tried to flip a boulder into the pool, but landed on his back. He never could quite make it all the way around. He surfaced and stroked to the side again. Nice back flop, Kendra said, standing beside the pool. That was one for the blooper reel. Seth climbed out of the water. I'd like to see you do a better one. Where have you been? I found a secret. What? I can't explain, but I can show you. Good as the lake? Not quite. Hurry up. Putting a towel over his shoulders, Seth stepped into his sandals. Kendra led him away from the pool through the garden to some flowering shrubs on the outskirts of the yard. Behind the plants lay a large pie tin full of milk, where a crowd of hummingbirds were feeding. They drink the milk? He asked. Yeah, but that isn't the point. Taste it. Why? You'll see. Have you tried it? Yes. Then what's the big deal? I told you, try it and you'll see. Kendra watched curiously as he kneeled by the tin. The hummingbirds dispersed. Seth dipped a finger into the milk and put it on his tongue. Pretty good. Sweet. Sweet? He lowered his head and plucked his lips against the surface of the milk. Pulling back, he wiped his mouth. Yeah, sweet and creamy. A little warm, though. Kendra, looking beyond Kendra, his eyes bulged. Seth jumped to his feet, screaming and pointing. What the heck are those? Kendra turned. All she saw was a butterfly and a couple of hummingbirds. She looked back at Seth. He was turning in circles, eyes darting around the garden, apparently perplexed and amazed. They're everywhere, he said in awe. What are? Look around! The fairies! Kendra stared at her brother. Could the milk have been totally fried his brain, or was he messing around with her? He didn't appear to be faking. He was over by a rosebush, gazing at a butterfly in wonder. Tentatively, he reached a hand towards it, but it fluttered out of reach. He turned back to Kendra. What? Was it the milk? This is way cooler than the lake. His excitement seemed genuine. Kendra eyed the tin of milk. Drink the milk. If Seth was playing a prank, his acting skills had suddenly improved tenfold. She dipped in a finger and put it in her mouth. Seth was right. It was sweet and warm. For an instant, the sun gleamed in her eyes, making her blink. She glanced back at her brother, who was creeping up on a small hovering of fairies. 3 had wings like butterflies, 1 like a dragonfly. She could not suppress a shriek at the impossible sight. Kendra looked back at the milk. A fairy with hummingbird wings was drinking from her cupped hand. Other than wings, the fairy looked like a slender woman, not quite 2 inches tall. She wore a glittering turquoise slip, had long dark hair. When Kendra leaned closer, the fairy zipped away. There was no way she was really seeing this, right? There had to be an explanation. But the fairies were everywhere, near and far, shimmering in vivid colours. How could she deny what was before her eyes? As Kendra continued to survey the garden, startled disbelief melted into wonder. Fairies of all conceivable varieties fluttered about, exploring blossoms, gliding on the breeze. and acrobatically avoiding her brother. Roaming the pathways of the garden in a daze, Kendra saw that the fairy woman appeared to represent all nationalities. Some looked Asian, some Indian, some African, some European. Several were less comparable to mortal women, with blue skin or emerald green hair, and a few had antennae. The wings came in all varieties, mostly patterned after butterflies, but much more elegantly shaped and radiantly coloured. All of the fairies gleamed brilliantly, outshining the flowers of the garden like the sun outshines the moon. Round in a corner on the pathway, Kendra stopped short. There stood Grandpa Sorensen, wearing a flannel shirt and work boots, arms folded across his chest. "We need to talk," he said. I feel like they didn't do anything wrong. The grandfather clock told the hour, chiming 3 times after the introductory melody. Sitting on a high-back leather armchair in Grandpa Sorensen's study, Kendra wondered if grandfather's clocks got their name because only grandparents owned them. She looked over at Seth, seated in an identical chair. It looked too big for him. These were chairs for adults. Why had Grandpa Sorensen left the room? Were they in trouble? After all, he had given her the keys that ended up leading her and the guinea pig to sample the milk. Even so, she could not quit worrying that she had discovered something that was meant to stay hidden. Not only were fairies real, but Grandpa Sorensen had hundreds in his yard. "Is that a fairy skull?" Seth asked, pointing to the flat-bottomed globe with the thumb-sized skull on Grandpa's desk. "Probably," Kendra said. "Are we busted?" "We better not be. There were no rules against drinking milk." The study door slid open. Grandpa entered along with Lena, who carried 3 mugs on a tray. Lena offered Kendra a mug, then Seth and Grandpa. The mug contained hot chocolate. Lena left the room as Grandpa took a seat behind his desk. "I am impressed how quickly you solved my puzzle," he said, taking a sip from his mug. "You wanted us to drink the milk?" Kendra said. "Assuming you were the right kind of people. Frankly, I don't know you that well. I hope that the kind of person who would take the trouble to solve my puzzle would be the kind of person who could handle the notion of the preserve of full magical creatures. Fablehaven would be too much to swallow for most people." "Fablehaven?" Seth repeated. "The name the founders gave this preserve centuries ago, a refuge for mystical creatures, a stewardship passed down from caretaker to caretaker over the years." Kendra tried the hot chocolate. It was superb. The flavour made her think of the rosebud chocolates. "What do you have besides fairies?" Seth asked. "Many beings, great and small, which is a true reason the woods are off limits. There are creatures out there much more perilous than venomous snakes or wild apes. Only certain orders of magical life forms are genuinely permitted in the yard. Fairies, pixies and such." Grandpa took another sip from his mug. "You like the hot chocolate?" "It's wonderful," Kendra said. "Made from the same milk that you sampled in the garden today. Same milk the fairies drink, just about the only food they'll eat. When mortals drink it, their eyes are open to the unseen world, but the effects wear off after a day. Lena will prepare you a cup every morning so that you can stop stealing from the fairies." "Where does it come from?" Kendra asked. "We make it in a special barn. We have some dangerous creatures in there too, so it's still off limits." Why is everything off limits?" Seth complained. "I've been a long way into the woods 4 times, and I've always been fine." "4 times?" Grandpa said. "All before the warning," Seth added hastily. "Yes, well, your eyes were not open to what truly surrounded you, and you were very fortunate. Even when you were blind to the enchanted creatures populating the forest, there are many places that you could have ventured into from which you would have not returned. Of course, now that you can see them, the creatures here can interact with you much more readily, so the danger is greater." "No offense, Grandpa, but is this really the truth?" Kendra asked. "You've told us so many versions of why the woods are forbidden." "You saw the fairies," he said. Kendra leaned forward. "Maybe the milk made us hallucinate. Maybe they were holograms. Maybe you just keep telling us whatever you think we'll believe." "I understand your concern," Grandpa said. I wanted to protect you from the truth about Fablehaven unless you sought it out for yourself. It is not the kind of information I wanted to thrust upon you. That is the truth. What I'm telling you now is the truth. You'll have ample opportunity to confirm my words." So the animals we saw at the pond were actually other creatures, like how the butterflies were fairies, Kendra clarified. Most assuredly, the pond could be a hazardous place. Return there now, and you would find friendly naiads beckoning you near the water in order to pull you under and drown you. That's so cruel, Kendra said. Depends on your perspective, Grandpa said, spreading out his hands. To them, your life is so ridiculously short that to kill you is seen as absurd and funny, no more tragic than squashing a moth. Besides, they have a right to punish trespassers. The island at the centre of the pond is a shrine to the fairy queen. No mortal is permitted to tread there. I know of a ground creeper who broke that rule. The moment he set foot on the sacred island, he transformed into a cloud of dandelion fluff, clothes and all. He scattered on the breeze and was never seen again. Why would he go in there? Kendra asked. The fairy queen is widely considered the most powerful figure in all of the fairy kingdom. The groundskeeper had a desperate need and went to plead for her assistance. Apparently, she was not impressed. In other words, he had no respect for what was off limits, Kendra said, giving Seth a meaningful look. Precisely, Grandpa agreed. The Queen of Fairies lived on a little island? Seth asked. No, it is merely a shrine meant to honour her. Similar shrines abound my property, and all can be dangerous. If the pond is dangerous, why does it have a boathouse? Kendra asked. A previous caretaker of this preserve had a fascination with the naiads. The dandelion guy? Seth asked. A different guy, said Grandpa. It's a long story. Ask Lena about it sometime. I believe she knows the tale. Kendra shifted in the oversized chair. Why do you live in such a scary place? Grandpa folded his arms on the desk. It's only frightening if you go where you don't belong. This entire sanctuary is consecrated ground, governed by laws that cannot be broken by the creatures who dwell here. Only on this hollowed soil could mortals interact with these beings with any measure of safety. As long as mortals remain within their boundaries, they are protected by the founding covenants of the preserve. Covenants? Seth asked. Agreements, specifically a treaty ratified by all of the orders of the whimsical life forms that dwell here, that affords measures of security for mortal caretakers. In a world where mortal man has become the dominant force, most creatures of enchantment have fled to refuges like this one. What are the covenants? Asked Kendra. The specific details are very complex, with many limitations and exceptions. Speaking broadly, they are based on the law of the harvest, the law of retribution. If you do not bother the creatures, they will not bother you. That is what affords you so much protection when you are unable to see them. But you can't interact with them, so they generally behave themselves likewise. But now we can see them, said Seth, which is why you must use caution. The fundamental premises of the law are mischief for mischief, magic for magic, and violence for violence. They will not initiate trouble unless you break the rules. You have to open the door. If you harass them, you open the door for them to harass you. Hurt them, and they can hurt you. Use magic on them, and they will use magic on you. Use magic? Seth said eagerly. Mortals were never meant to use magic, Grandpa said. We are non-magical beings, but I have learned a few practical principles that help me manage things. Nothing you would find very remarkable. Can you turn Kendra into a toad? No, but there are beings out there that could, and I would not be able to change her back, which is why I need to finish this thought. Breaking the rules can include trespassing when you are not allowed. There are geographic boundaries set where certain creatures are allowed, and certain creatures, including mortals, are not permitted. The boundaries function as a way to contain the darker creatures without causing an uproar. If you go where you do not belong, you could open the door to vicious retribution from powerful enemies. So only good creatures can enter the yard, Kendra said. Grandpa became very serious. None of these creatures are good, not the way we think of good. None are safe. Much of mortality is peculiar to mortality. The best creatures here are merely not evil. The fairies aren't safe, Seth asked. They aren't out to harm anyone, or I wouldn't allow them in the yard. I suppose they are capable of good deeds, but they would not normally do them for what we would consider the right reasons. Take brownies, for instance. Brownies don't fix things to help people. They fix things because they enjoy fixing things. Do the fairies talk? Kendra asked. Not much to humans. They have a language all of their own, although they rarely speak to each other except to trade insults. Most never condescend to human speech. They consider everything beneath them. Fairies are vain, selfish creatures. You may have noticed I drained all the fountains and the bird baths outside. When they are full, the fairies assemble to stare at their reflections all day. Is Kendra a fairy? Seth asked. Grandpa bit his lip and stared at the floor, obviously trying to choke back a laugh. We had a mirror outside once and they all flocked around it, Kendra said, studiously ignoring both the comment and the reaction. I wondered what the heck was going on. Grandpa regained his composure. Exactly the sort of display I was trying to avoid by draining the bird baths. Fairies are remarkably conceited. Outside of the sanctuary like this one, they won't even let a mortal glimpse them. Since they consider looking at themselves the ultimate delight, they deny the pleasure to others. Most of the nymphs have the same mentality. Why don't they care here? Kendra asks. They still care, but they can't hide when they drink their milk. So they have reluctantly grown accustomed to mortals seeing them. I have to laugh sometimes. The fairies pretend not to care what mortals think about them, but try giving one a compliment. She'll blush, and the others will crowd in for their turn. You would think they would be embarrassed. I think they're pretty, Seth said. They're gorgeous, Grandpa agreed. And they can be useful. They handle most of my gardening. But good, safe, not so much. Kendra swallowed the last of her hot chocolate. So if we don't go into the woods or the barn and we don't bother the fairies, we'll be fine? Yes. This house and the yard around it is the most protected location in Fablehaven. Only the gentle creatures are allowed here. Of course, there are a few nights a year when the creatures run amok, and one of those is coming up, but I'll tell you more about it when the time comes. Seth scooted forward in his chair. I want to hear all about the evil creatures. What's out there? For the sake of your ability to sleep at night, I'm going to keep that to myself. I met that weird old lady. She was really something else. Grandpa gripped the edge of his desk. That encounter is a frightening example of why the woods are forbidden. It could have been disastrous. You ventured towards a very hazardous area. Is she a witch? Seth asked. She is. Her name is Muriel Taggart. How come I could see her? Witches are mortal. Then why don't you get rid of her? Seth suggested. The shack is not her home. It is her prison. She personifies the reasons why exploring in the woods is unwise. Her husband was a caretaker here more than 160 years ago. She was an intelligent, lovely woman. But she became a frequent visitor to some of the darker portions of the forests, where she consorted with unsavory beings. They tortured her. Before long, she became enamored with the power of witchcraft, and they acquired considerable influence over her. She became unstable. Her husband tried to help her, but she was already too demented. When she tried to aid some of the foul denizens of the woods in a treacherous act of rebellion, her husband called in assistance and had her imprisoned. She's been trapped in that shack ever since, held captive by the knots in her rope you saw. Let her story serve as another warning. You have no business in those woods. I get it, Seth said. He looked solemn. Enough jabbering about the rules and monsters, Grandpa said, standing up. I have chores, and you have new worlds to explore. The day is fading, so go make the most of it, but stay in the yard. What do you do all day? Kendra inquired, walking out of the study beside Grandpa. Oh, I have many chores to keep this place in order. Fablehaven is home to many extraordinary wonders and delights, but it requires a great deal of maintenance. You might be able to accompany me sometime, now that you know the true nature of the place. Mundane work mostly. I'd expect you to have more fun playing in the garden. Kendra laid a hand on Grandpa's arm. I want to see as much as I can. That was a pretty long chapter. They're usually 20 minutes. But if you stuck around for 30 minutes, good for you. But that was exciting, huh? Fairies and strange beings in Fablehaven. That was a pretty fun chapter, so I'm very excited to see how it goes next time. So we will be back next Monday with chapter 6, actually, which is called Maddox. And we'll be back next Monday with that. So have a great rest of your day and enjoy your week. And I will see you next Monday for chapter 6 of Fablehaven. Bye, you guys.